Russian sleep experiment. Russia's sleep experiment was a series of 30 days experiment carried out by Soviet researchers on 5 prisoners of war. Around the late 1940s, a group of Soviet researchers set out to find out more about the consequences of sleep deprivation. 5 prisoners of war were rounded up and placed in an airtight chamber and were drugged with experimental stimulant gas. Just after the war had ended, the researchers carried out these experiments, albeit secretly. The prisoners of war had been promised their freedom if they could last all through the number of days estimated by the researchers for the experiments. What do you think would happen if someone were to stay days without sleeping? Just wait till you see the effects of sleep deprivation on the subjects. What follows after the experiment was carried out after days of no sleep was so scary. The prisoners of war, while in the gas chambers, would later exhibit a series of unusual behaviors. The inmates would scream and do all kinds of crazy things, including tearing their skin off their bodies, causing the chamber to be covered in blood. Soviet researchers' sleep experiments and the series of events that occurred. Starting the experiments once the subjects were placed inside the chambers, the researchers made use of microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows to monitor the subjects. The prisoners were provided with books, water, toilet, clothes to sleep on, but no beds. Food that would be enough for the 5 prisoners for a couple of months was also provided for them. Once the experiment began on the first day, everything was perfect for a couple of days. The first 4 days were normal, no usual behaviors were exhibited by the subjects. Instead, they conversed freely with the researchers. But on day 5 of the experiment, the subjects started to show signs of stress and distress. The subjects were starting to show signs of paranoia, started to share their traumatic experiences in their past, with their conversations starting to be in a darker tone. The prisoners made numerous complaints while narrating the series of events that led them to their present condition in the gas chambers. Severe paranoia sign was now shown by the subjects, leading them to stop conversations among themselves. Instead, they whispered via the microphones. The subjects also whispered through the glass porthole-sized windows, leaking information about each other, while trying to win over the researchers. They believed that maybe leaking each other's information to researchers would get them released from the gas chambers. The researchers would later suspect that such behaviors exhibited by the subjects could be the result of the gas they were drugged with inside the chamber. Day 9 of the experiment, the subjects started to exhibit unusual behaviors as a result of the effects of the gas on their body, especially their nervous system. One of the subjects started to shout uncontrollably, running around the entire gas chambers, screaming for hours. In the process of running and yelling around, the subject would later tear his vocal cords, causing his voice to turn to squeals. The subject attempted to yell again, but his voice could only be made of squeals as a result of hours of continuous yelling. Another subject would later join in the yelling and screaming, while the remaining subjects remained quiet. The remaining prisoners who were quiet would later rip apart the books which had been provided for them in the gas chambers. Pages torn from the books were then smeared with their feces, with the subjects plastering the pages ripped out of the books over the glass porthole-sized windows through which they were being monitored. In the process, they prevented the researchers from monitoring their activities while inside the gas chambers. After covering the windows, the screaming came to an end. The subjects stopped all forms of communications among one another. No sound, no sign of life was heard from the gas chambers for 3 days, prompting the researchers to run a check on the microphones to confirm its functionality. The researchers had wondered the possibility of the 5 inmates being inside the chambers and no sound of life for 3 solid days. They would later confirm signs of life, as the oxygen consumption level was a sign all 5 subjects were indeed alive. On confirming signs of life, the researchers would later announce to the subjects via intercom of their intention of opening the gas chamber to confirm the effectiveness of the microphones. On day 14, the subjects were then instructed to keep away from the doors, stay calm, lie down, and no form of violence was expected from them. The researchers would offer a release to 1 out of the 5 subjects if the instructions were followed. But the researchers got a shocking reply that startled them. A voice from the chambers sounded out, "We no longer wish to be freed." Arguments were ensured among the researchers on the next call of action, with them reaching an agreement to end the experiments of the night of day 15. On day 15 of the experiment, the researchers would replace the stimulant gas in the chamber with fresh air. The plan was to get these subjects released. Once the gas was replaced with fresh air, the subjects started to make noise and sounds. To their greatest surprise, the subjects weren't happy with being released. Instead, they pleaded for the gas to be turned back on, screaming at the top of their voices in fear. But soldiers were sent into the chambers to retrieve the subjects by force. What would follow was a shocking sight, scary, and something that had never been seen before. On getting to the chambers, the soldiers discovered that 1 out of the 5 subjects had died, with 4 subjects alive. Soldiers found the floor of the chambers covered with blood, which had come from the remains of the dead subject. The remains of the deceased subject were discovered in the drains, where the already rotten body was dumped, preventing water and blood to flow out easily. The rest of the subjects on discovery were seen with numerous body defects and permanent skin damage. They were missing chunks of flesh and muscle from different parts of their bodies, exposing bones on their fingers. On further examination of the subjects' bodies, it was discovered that the result of the missing muscles from the bodies was done with the use of hands, which means it was self-inflicted and not done using the teeth as earlier speculated by the researchers. They also had their abdomens ripped open with their hands. They had removed the majority of the skins around the abdomen. Exposing their digestive systems and the lungs, some of the subjects even consumed their flesh. Despite losing the flesh around the abdomen and digestive systems, their digestive tracts were still functional and in good condition. The test subjects couldn't leave the gas chambers, demanding once again to be left in the gas chambers. The subjects also demanded the gas to be turned back on, but the soldiers insisted on bringing them out of the chamber. This will lead to altercation between the soldiers and the subjects, with the prisoners fighting back and hard. One of the subjects, during the scuffle, ruptured his spleen, losing so much blood in the process, and collapsed shortly. Before collapsing, attempts were made to sedate the subject by doctors, but their effort proved futile. The particular subject broke the ribbon arm of one of the doctors who were brought to sedate them. He would fight the soldiers while also screaming the word "more" before collapsing shortly. One of the soldiers would also lose his life after having his throat ripped out by one of the subjects during the fight, while another suffered damages to the testicles. In total, about 5 soldiers lost their lives around the period the experiments on the subjects were carried out. The remaining subjects would later be bounded and moved to a medical facility for proper treatment and care. Operations were performed on the surviving subjects. One of them would fight back while anesthetized, tearing his muscles and breaking his bones during the scuffle. This particular subject would later lose his life after being anesthetized. His heart failed to function and he died. The remaining subjects were operated on, with majority of them laughing so hard during the procedures, the doctors had to administer a paralytic agent to keep them in check. After the surgery, the prisoners were asked their reasons for injuring themselves and why they wanted to remain in the gas chamber. All surviving subjects chorused, "I must remain awake." The subjects were then taken back into the chambers alongside the stimulant on the instruction of the soldiers. While inside the gas chambers again, the subjects were monitored with EKG monitors, which had shown recurring signs of brain death in the subjects. One of the men would later fall asleep and die before the gas chambers were closed again. Just 2 subjects out of the 5 were alive, with the only subject who could talk screaming the gas chambers to be closed once again. The soldiers would instruct the remaining 2 subjects to be locked inside the gas chambers, alongside 3 of the Soviet researchers, to ascertain the subjects' behaviors with civilians. One of the researchers declined being locked up with the prisoners, declaring the subjects were no longer people, instead referring to them as monsters. Annoyed with the whole scenario, chief researcher pulled out a gun and fired at a commanding officer, killing him instantly. He also fired and killed 2 of the remaining subjects, with just one of the prisoners left and other personnel taking to their heels. Chief researcher turned while pointing his gun at the last subject alive. He asked, "What are you?" The remaining subject would smile, then answered, "Have you forgotten so soon?" "We are you," mentioning all subjects were madness lurking within around them all, who had been begging to be set free at every moment in their innermost animal minds. He also stated they were what the researchers hide from their beds every night. The subject continued, stating, "They were what the researchers anesthetize into silence and paralyze when they go to sleep while they were kept in check." The researcher was startled for a few minutes, then with the gun fired at the subject. In his last moments, the subject sighed while murmuring, "So nearly free." Some people believe it never happened. Some believe it to be a fictional story, whilst most believe it to be a true life event. Could be a true life event, as sleep deprivation could have too many negative effects on our body. The events and experiments that followed cannot be ascertained if it were real or not.